Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and in Mir Hashem today we will be learning Daf Nun Vav Amid Beis. We have a drop of unfinished business left on Nun Vav Amid Aleph, so we'll be concluding Siman Kuf Samach Aleph and beginning Siman Kuf Samach Beis. So we pick up on Nun Vav Amid Aleph 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Siman Kuf Samach Aleph Sif Dalet. Says the Mechaber, shiur Netillas Yadayim, the proper measurement, I guess, for Netillas Yadayim. In other words, what part of the hand do you need to wash for Netillas Yadayim? Shiur Netillas Yadayim Kol Hayad is the entire hand, ad hakone shel zroya. So the arm is made up of 3 sections. In English, we call the area from the shoulder to the elbow is the upper arm. From the elbow to the wrist is the forearm. And then from the wrist to the fingertips is the hand. Says the Mechaber over here that for Netillas Yadayim, you need to wash Kol Hayad, the entire hand. And the way he defines the entire hand is Ad HaKoneh Shel Zeroya, until the koneh of the arm. The koneh is what we call the forearm. The Mechaber and the Mishnah Berurah, they're going to use the word koneh to refer to the area between the wrist and the elbow. So what do you need to wash for the Netillas Yadayim? The entire hand from the fingertips till the wrist. Shiur Netillas Yadayim kol hayad ana koneh shel zraya. V'yesh omrim, but there is an opinion that says that for the Netillas Yadayim, really you only have to wash less than that. V'yesh omrim ad mekayim chibur ha'etzba'is lakaf hayad. There is an opinion that says, more than one opinion, that says that for the Netillas Yadayim, you only have to wash until the knuckles. You have to wash until the area where the fingers connect to the palm. So that would be until the knuckles. So that's a more kuludik opinion. Right away, you recognize that opinion from Hilchas Tisha B'Av, Hilchas Yom Kippur, where there's an Isser Rechitza. So on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur, we say that when you do have to wash your hands, let's say, but when you wash Negavaser or when you wash coming out of the Beis HaKisei, on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, we're not machmir to wash all the way to the wrist. Instead, we follow the more kuludik opinion, and we wash only until the knuckles. Especially on Yom Kippur, there's an Isser Daraisa of Rechitza. Rechitza is one of the Chamesh Yunim. So we're not going to go ahead and be machmir like a Shitas Rishonim that requires us to wash the entire hand until the wrist, if instead we could go with the Shita that says to wash only until the knuckles. So here you see it, that by Netillas Yadayim, we have this machlokes, we have this first opinion, and if you look at the Baragola is Katan Vav, this is brought down in the name of the Rif. We have the first opinion that Netillas Yadayim for a Suda requires you to wash all the way to the wrist, and then we have a Yesh Omrim that the Baragola is brought down in the name of the Rush that says that you only have to wash until the knuckles. For a more extensive analysis of the various Rishonim who take different positions on this, you would take a look at the Biur Halacha Dibur HaMaschil V'roi Linhoig, where the Biur Halacha goes into this question quite thoroughly. Now says the Mechaber V'roi Linhoig Kedas HaRishon. The Mechaber tells us that it is proper to be noig like the first opinion, and that is to wash the Netillas Yadayim all the way until the wrist. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Chaf Ad HaKoneh. The first opinion requires us to wash until the wrist. Ritzayin Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say is Ad Soif Pisas Hayad, until the end of the hand. Shehu Mekayim Chibur Hayad VaHaKoneh, the point at which the hand connects to the forearm, which is of course the wrist. Ois Katan Chaf Aleph. The Mechaber said, "V'roi linoig." It is proper to be noig like the more machmir opinion, which requires us to wash until the wrist. Ritzayin Loimar. After bedina misha yirtza lahakal kedei shnia ein moichin biyadai. Even though if somebody wanted to be makel like the opinion that says that you only need to wash until the knuckles, you cannot protest. You can't object to somebody doing that. Why? Because of a rule that we've already seen several times since we started learning Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. And that is the kol suffix with Netillas Yadayim lekula. Whenever we have a suffix in Netillas Yadayim, we always could go lekula. Now, when we learned that halacha, we saw in the Mishnah Berurah said that a suffix bedina, when we have like a machlokes rishonim, that equals a suffix. Right? So over here we have a machlokes rishonim. Do you have to wash till the knuckles or do you have to wash till the wrist? Well, that machlokes rishonim creates a suffix. So really, we would be allowed to go lekula and to say to wash only until the knuckles. Nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, lechatchila roy lahakbir kedei rishona. Lechatchila, it is preferable to be makbir like the first opinion and wash till the wrist. V'chei noyag in ha'olam, and that is the way the Welt is noyag. The Welt fertzach to wash until the wrist. The Sefer Outse Almugim Harichiach, the Sefer Outse Almugim proves Shahar Begedole Rishonim Seivrim Kain, that this is not only a one-off, it's not only the Rif that holds that you have to wash until the wrist, but many other Rishonim as well. V'yesh lizar min lahakel bazeh, and you should take great care not to be makel, like the shita that says that you wash until the knuckles. V'ayin bebir halacha, and he sends you to the Bir Halacha for a more extensive treatment of this question. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. Eis Katlachav Beis in the Mishnah Berurah, Kedas Arishain. The Mechaber said that it would be proper to be noyeg like the first opinion and to wash all the way until the wrist. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Umashma, the implication is the b'shas atchak sheyesh l'bayim b'tzimtzum. If somebody is in a pressing circumstance where he only has a very limited amount of water, yuchal lismay chadas hamakilin. In that case, you could be saimach on the more kuladik opinion and wash only until the knuckles. The Achrayim write, the Netillas Yadayim meluchlach mizeya ukahai gavna, that if the palm of the hand is factually dirty, in that case, then everybody would agree that you have to wash it till the wrist. So this is it's a very potent, powerful line here in the Mishnah Berurah that you could just blow right past, and that is that we have this machlokes rishonim. Do you have to wash it till the wrist, or could you get away with washing only until the knuckles? We saw that the Mishnah Berurah said that since really by any suffix Netillas Yadayim we go lekula, so really you could be soimach on the kula and you could wash only until the knuckles. But then the Mishnah Berurah said certainly it is preferable not to do that. Certainly it's preferable not to take advantage of that kula, and instead to be noyeg like the more machmer opinion to wash until the wrist. We saw he says that the Welt taka is noyeg to wash until the wrist, and now here at the end of the Mishnah Berurah he throws us for a loop and he just points out, remember, this whole machlokes is only negaya to stam yadayim. If you're washing because stam yadayim ashniya is l'toma, and we have a takanas chazal that you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim for a suda, so then yes, we have this machlokes. Do you have to wash all the way to the wrist, or you could wash only to the knuckles? But if your hands are dirty, then everybody agrees that you have to wash until the wrist. Well, why is that? Well, let's go back to what we learned all the way in the beginning of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. Why were the Chazal Mesaked that you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim before you sit down, before you kaveis through the lapas? It was Mishum Srach Truma. What's the Mishum Srach Truma? The Mishum Srach Truma is that you're not Kaihanim. We don't want Kaihanim to eat Truma with dirty hands. Why don't we want them to eat Truma with dirty hands? Because they might cause hefsid Truma. They might ruin Truma. If the example I gave back then, I remember, was if you have a kohen who's an auto mechanic and he's working in his shop and he has greasy hands and he goes and he picks up a tuna fish sandwich that's made with truma bread and he picks it up and he gets grease on his sandwich, he's not going to want to eat the sandwich anymore. So what's he going to do? He's going to throw out the truma. So now you ruined truma. So we don't want kehanim to be ruining truma. So what did we say? We said, Kehanim, you got to wash your hands before you touch Truma. Now, we wanted to give it the force of din. We wanted to really make that a potent gzeira. We didn't want to just tell the Kohanim, hey, Kohanim, you got to wash before you eat Truma. What we did was we said, Kohanim, you should know, Stam Yadayim Ashniyos Latoma. Oh, if Chazal were Masakim that Stam Yadayim Ashniyos Latoma, that a Kohen with Stam Yadayim who touches Truma is going to make it Truma Tameya. Well, when you tell Kohanim that they're running the risk of making Truma Tameh, now they're going to make certain to wash their hands before they touch Truma. Now we extended the Gzeira a little bit further, and we said, you know what? We're not going to chepa only Kohanim with this. What we're going to do is we're going to have Gans Klal Yisrael wash their hands before the Kaveh Sud Al Pas. Why? Because if Gans Klal Yisrael washes the Netillas Yadayim before they sit down to be Kaveh Sud Al Pas, then definitely Kohanim are going to wash their hands before they eat bread. And most Truma is grain products, is turned into bread. So this was a way of protecting Truma. So now, Nachzor in Yonenu, says the Mishnah Berurah over here, we have a machlokes whether you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim until the wrist, or whether you only have to wash the Netillas Yadayim until the knuckles. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if your hands are dirty, well then definitely you have to wash your hands. Because let's remember, this whole Gzeira starts, Mishum Strach Truma, it all starts because of dirty hands. So if your hands are dirty, definitely you have to wash until the wrist. Okay, with that we conclude Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, and now let's move on to Siman Kuf Samach Beis. Siman Kuf Samach Beis, Hagboha, the need to lift up your hands after washing the Netillas Yadayim, V'shivshuf hayodayim, and literally rubbing the hands, B'netila by Netillas Yadayim. Uba Yud Seifim, and here we have 10 Seifim. Okay, the title of the Siman is a bit cryptic and a bit vague if you haven't learned these halachas already. So apparently we have a Siman over here that's dedicated to the idea that you need to lift your hands up after you wash the Netillas Yadayim so that your fingers are higher than your wrist, and Shivshaf Yadayim, rubbing the hands. So let's see what's at play over here. Says the Mechaber here in Sif Aleph, Hanoitel, somebody who washes the Netillas Yadayim, Tzarich lahagbiya yadav, he has to lift up his hands, says the Ramah in the parentheses, Tahainu Roshei Etzba'osav, meaning he has to elevate his fingertips, he has to elevate the tips of his fingers, lemaila, upwards. Why does he have to do this? We'll read the words of the Mechaber, but I'm not really going to explain it because the Mishnah Berurah is going to do a deep dive into it, and then we'll really understand what's being said here. But the words of the Mechaber are, why, when you wash the Netillas Yadayim, do you have to lift up your hands so that your fingertips are elevated? Why? Says the Mechaber on the top of Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, Shelo yetzu mayim chutz laperek, so that water, when you wash the Netillas Yadayim, should not travel beyond the wrist, v'yachzeru, and then flow down and come back to the hands, v'yatamu es hayadayim, and they will render the hands once again tamei. Now, don't spend too much time trying to work this out, trying to work out what the problem is, what the potential problem is, because we're going to see that now in the Chavetz Chaim Ba'arichus. So let's go to Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Akdim Hakdama Kitzara. Chavetz Chaim says, I will open up this Siman with a short preface, Kefi Hamavur B'Tor Ubeis Yosef, and I'm going to write this Hakdama based on what's explained in the Torah and the Beis Yosef, Ubeyeser HaPoskim, and with additional Poskim, Kidei Sheyisbaru Elu HaSeifim, so that we should be able to understand the upcoming Seifim in the Shulchan Aruch. Vehu, and the Hakdama is as follows. Hine, Nispar B'Siman Kuf Nun Ches, B'Mishnah Berurah Kosov Katlasif Kat Aleph, we explained already in Siman Kuf Nun Ches, all the way in the beginning of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. We explained already, and it's spelled out over there in Siman Kuf Nun Ches in Mishnah Berurah is Kat Aleph, The tam Netillas Yadayim, that the basis for Netillas Yadayim, who mishum the Yadayim askani yoisheim, is because hands are, during the day, are busy touching all sorts of things. V'lachein gozer alein tuma, and therefore we would geyser that stam Yadayim ashniyos l'tuma. Now, I gave you the 30,000-foot explanation earlier in the shiur, and that is that Yadayim askani yoisheim, hands get dirty. If we're going to let Kaihanim just go ahead and touch Truma, they're going to cause Hefsid Truma. We're going to have Srach Truma. So we want to protect Truma. In order to protect Truma, we told Kaihanim that they can't eat Truma without washing. And we told Yisraelim that they also have to wash. That way the Kaihanim will be used to washing. Okay. So, again, says the Mishnah Berurah here, we explained earlier in the beginning of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim in Siman Kuf Nun Ches, that the underpinning of the Gzeira of Netillas Yadayim is because you never know what hands might be touching. Hands might be busy, and they touch everything under the sun. And therefore, in order to protect Truma, we said that there is a Tumah that rests on Stam Yadayim. Stam Yadayim ashniyos l'tumah. Stam Yadayim are considered to have second-degree Tumah. Im lo yitarem b'revias mayim. Unless you go ahead and you're mitaher the hands, what does that mean? You wash the Netillas Yadayim with a revias of water, right? We just spent a couple of shiurim learning all about the revias mayim. In order to wash the Netillas Yadayim, you need a kais that holds the revias, right? We had a shiur d'rishonim. Does the revias of mayim actually have to hit the hands or not? But you need a kais that can hold a revias, and you need a revias of mayim in the kais. Why? Because you need a body of water that has a din mikveh. So you need a revias. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Then, to do this Netillas Yadayim properly, says the Chavetz Chaim, v'tzarech lital shnei pa'amim al yadav. You have to wash each hand twice. Why? Debeshvicha rishona, because when you do the first pour on the hand, mitaher yadav, you're being mitaher the hands. The hands were stam yadayim, and they possessed second-degree tumah. When you take a cup that has a revias, and you do one pour onto the hand, it takes the tumah off the hand. It's mitaher the hand. So like the Mishnah Berurah says here, b'shvicha rishayna, with the first pour, mitaher yadav, you mitaher your hands. Aval hamayim atzmam tmeim hein. But the water that's left on the hand from the first pour is tamei. Why? Shenitmu miyadav. Because they became tamei from the hands. So what's happening here so far? Let's keep track. Let's follow the paper trail. You had stam yadayim. Stam yadayim have second-degree tumah. You took a cup and you poured once on the hand. Now we're assuming right now that you poured less than a revias. You had a keli that could hold a revias, and you had a revias in the keli, but you're not using all the water for the first pour. So you take the keli and you do a first pour on the right hand. Okay, that takes the tumah off the hands. But the water that's left on the hand from the first pour is now tamei, because it became tamei from the hands. So the way I usually say it is, it's very nice that it took the tumah off the hand, but now the tumah is in the water. So now you have a hand that's tahar, but it's wet with the mayim that's tamei. Okay? So let's go back into the Mishnah Berurah here now. So the Mishnah Berurah said, "V'tzarich lital shtei pamim al yadav." You have to wash twice on each hand. Debeshvicha rishayna mitar yadav, because with the first pour you're being mitar the hands. With the first pour you're taking the tumah off the hands. Aval hamayim atzmam tmeim hein. But the water from the first pour is now tamei shenitmu miyadav, because it became tamei from the hand. Ushvicha shniya, and now the second pour, mitaheres oisam, is mitaher the mayim. So the first pour took the tumah off the hands, but the water is tameh. The second pour is mitaher the mayim, and now there's no more tumah. V'nigmar taharas yadayim, and now by virtue of the second pour, you have completed the tahara of the hands. Okay. Now in the brackets, the Mishnah Berurah points out, however, im nishpach haravias b'basachas al shtei yodav, were you to pour, again, we're assuming that you started off with exactly a revius of mayim. Were you to have a second individual available, and that second individual took the cup with the full revius, and he poured a full revius of mayim on both of your hands at one shot, or maybe you had two revius available. So you poured one revius on your right hand, and then you poured a second revius on your left hand. Then most paiskim would say that you don't need a second pour. Why not? Because this is something I've said already many times. According to most paiskim, when you pour a complete revius of mayim on the hand, the tumah does not come off the hand and go into the mayim. The tumah goes puff. The tumah vanishes. The same way when somebody's tumah, he goes into a mikveh, we don't say that the tumah comes off the person and goes into the water in the mikveh, and now you have to drain the mikveh between each person because the water is tumah. No, so where did the tumah go? The tumah vanished. So too, most paiskim say, were you to pour a full revius of mayim onto the hand, the tumah would vanish. Now you don't need mayim shneim. And this is how the Mechaber rules later on in Sif Dalet in this Siman. So let's pause here for a second in the Mishnah Berurah, and let's just recap what we've said so far, because we need to have a thorough understanding of this before we go further in this Siman, even though these are concepts that I've already spoken about quite a bit since the beginning of Hilchos Netillas Yadayim. You start off Netillas Yadayim with two hands that are both tameh with second degree tumah. Stam Yadayim Shniyos L'tumah. So you're starting off with hands that have second degree tumah. To get rid of it, you need to wash Netillas Yadayim. If you take a cup that holds a revius, you need a cup that holds a revius, and it's got to have a revius in it. So you take a cup with a revius, and you do one pour onto your right hand. You don't use the whole revius. You can't use the whole revius because you need it for both your hands. So you take, maybe you took a quarter of a revius. A revius is a quarter of a lug. So you took a quarter of a lug, right? You take the cup, you pour water onto the hand. By doing that, you removed the tumah from the hand. But now where's the tumah? The tumah is in the water. So you've got a hand. It's very interesting, it happens to be. And the lumdus over here is very fascinating. It's beyond the scope of what we do here, but we're going to have to get into it a little bit, maybe even get today. But what you have now is, you have a hand that's tahor, but it's wet with mayim that's tameh. Now the halacha is that mayim that's tameh cannot make the hand tameh. Interestingly enough, were you to take that hand and touch your other hand, it would make your other hand tameh. But the tameh water that's on that hand from the Netillas Yadayim that you just did is not capable of making that hand tameh. So again, you had a hand that was tameh, you did one pour, the tumah came off the hand, and it went into the mayim. So now I've got a hand that's tahor, but it's got tameh water on it. What are you going to do with that tameh water? Oh, the answer is that what you're going to do with that tameh water is, you're going to pour a second pour on the hand. The second pour is going to be matar the mayim. Now, the tahara of this hand is nigmar. By using two pours, you've completed the tahara of this hand. And now you're going to go do the same thing to the other hand. You're going to pour once on the left hand, take the tumah off the hand, it goes into the water, and then you're going to pour a second time on the left hand and be matar the water, and now you're good. Now you have two hands that are tar. Now, interesting question. Let's say you pour one time on the right hand. So now the hand is tar, but the water is tameh. And instead of pouring a second time, you take a towel and you dry off the hand. Now, if you do that, you have effectively removed the tameh water from the right hand. So why do you need a second pour? You don't really need a second pour. Really what you could do is you could just dry the hand and you'll accomplish the same thing. Now, this gets tied up in a machlokes, but the way the shita that the Mechaber seems to be following, the reason you can't do this is because of a takanas Chazal. Chazal didn't want you to do that. You know why? Because Chazal were worried. If you're going to do that, what might happen is, remember, you've got a wet hand with tameh water. You're going to take a towel and you're going to start drying that hand. Now, it could be that while you're drying that hand is going to touch the other hand. So your right hand has tameh water on it, and it's going to touch the left hand. Now you have tameh water on the left hand. The problem is, the tameh water that's on the left hand cannot become tahor by pouring water on it. Since it came from tameh, it came from tumah from this hand, it didn't come from tumah from this hand. If it would have water that becomes tameh from that hand itself, you could be matar it by pouring water over it. But if tumah gets transferred from one hand to the other hand, you can't remove that tumah by pouring water on it. So we don't want you to get involved with drying your hands in order to remove tameh water because it gets too complex. It causes problems. So instead, what we said was, in order to get rid of the tameh water, you need mayim shneim. You need a second pour on the hand to get rid of that tumah. So that brings us to the point that we're at now in the Mishnah Berurah. You washed mayim rishonim. You took the tumah off the hand into the water. You washed mayim shneim to be metaher the hand. And now you're going to do the same thing on the other hand. Okay. Now, we're now going to lay the groundwork for the potential problem that Chazal were worried about that led Chazal to say that preferably, if you wash the Netillas Yadayim, where each time you pour, you use less than a revius of mayim, you need to lift your hands up so that water should not be able to flow from beyond the hand, from past the wrist, back onto the hands. Let's see what the problem that Chazal will worry about is. Let's see. Va'amru b'Gemara. The Gemara cited Daf Daled Amud Beis brings down a brisa. Now that brisa just makes a very simple statement and doesn't explain it really. The brisa says that when you wash the Netillas Yadayim, you need to lift up your hands. That's what the brisa says. You wash the Netillas Yadayim, you need to lift up your hands. Okay. Somebody who washes the Netillas Yadayim has to elevate his hands so that his fingertips are higher than his wrist. Why? So that water should not go beyond the wrist, v'yachzeru, and then come back v'yatamu hayadayim, and be metame the hands. Okay. So we need to understand this. We see that Chazal said you need to elevate the hands, and we see that it's because they were afraid of water going beyond the wrist and then coming back. But we need to understand exactly what were they afraid of. So, says the Mishnah Berurah, Upershu ha-mefarshim, the Mefarshim explain, Tahainu, that this means, Techaishinon, we are concerned, Shema yetzu ma'at mimayim harishonim hatmeim chutz leperik. Maybe when you wash mayim rishonim, some of the mayim rishonim water will travel beyond the wrist. Let's remember, we've learned many times that when you wash the Netillas Yadayim, you should wash with plenty of water. And we've said that it's a schooler for ashirus, it protects against anius, don't be skimpy with the water. We just learned at the end of the previous Siman that you have to wash until the wrist. So you're going to take a cup and you're going to do a nice pour of water on your hand. Now, it's very possible that what will happen is some water from that pour is going to land on your hand, right? And it's going to go beyond the wrist onto the forearm. Okay, so what? I'll tell you so what. When the mayim landed on your hand, it took the tumah off the hand, and that tumah went into the water. Now, when that water flows beyond your wrist, that water is tameh water, right? Now, let's say you go ahead and you wash mayim shneim. Now, the mayim shneim are going to be mitaher all of the tameh mayim rishonim that are on your hands. But you're not washing mayim shneim beyond your wrist. So if there's tameh water left over for the mayim rishonim beyond your wrist, and then after you wash mayim shneim, that water travels down back onto your hand, you're going to have tameh water on your hand. So here, to put it like this, I'm washing the Netillas Yadayim. Okay? Here's my hand. It's positioned downward. I take a cup. I do a good big splash of mayim rishonim on my hand. And I get water up over here. Then I take another pour, and I pour mayim shneim on my hand. Okay, when I poured the mayim shneim on my hand, I was mitaher all the mayim rishonim that's on my hand. But there's mayim rishonim that's tameh over here. And since my hand is positioned like this, it could roll forward. And now, after I finished my Netillas Yadayim, I washed mayim rishonim, I washed mayim shneim, and now I still have tameh mayim rishonim on my hand. So therefore, what did Chazal say? Chazal said, make sure that you wash mayim rishonim, you wash mayim shneim, and you elevate your hand. That way nothing's running back. No tameh water is running back onto your hand. Now, I'll just give you a heads up of something that the Mishnah Berurah is going to say. It gets even a little more complicated. You'll say to yourself, all right, so let's do like this. Let's wash mayim rishonim. We'll wash mayim rishonim. Now, let's say some tameh mayim rishonim water gets up over the wrist. You know what? We'll give a good solid pour of mayim shneim, and we'll get all of the mayim rishonim water, even the water that went up past my wrist, we'll get that water too, and we'll be matar the mayim rishonim that's above the wrist with mayim shneim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you can't. You can't. You know why? Because the mayim shneim has no jurisdiction beyond your wrist. What do I mean it has no jurisdiction? It doesn't work. The dinim of the Netillas Yadayim are in play and are at force from the wrist to the fingertips, not beyond the wrist. If you have tameh mayim rishonim water up beyond your wrist, you could pour water on it from now till the cows come home. It's not going to be matar that water. You know why? Because that's a din in the Netillas Yadayim. There's no din in the Netillas Yadayim over here. The din in the Netillas Yadayim is over here. There's no din in the Netillas Yadayim here. So if mayim rishonim water became tameh from your hand and then went here, and now you pour mayim shneim on it over here, it's ineffective. It's not going to do anything. And then that mayim rishonim water runs back onto your hand, you got a problem. So this is why Chazal said you got to elevate your hands. Let's take a look inside. I'm going to go back to the words V'amru b'Gemara. V'amru b'Gemara, Chazal say the Gemara site the Daftal and Beis, the Hanoitel, somebody washes the Netillas Yadayim, Tzarech shiagbiya yadav, he has to elevate his hands, Shelo yetzu mayim chutz leperek, so that mayim rishonim water should not go beyond the wrist, v'yachzeru v'yitamu yadayim, and then flow back to the hand and be matami the hand. Upershu ha'mefarshim, and the mefarshim explain the hainu that this means, the chayshina that we're concerned, shema yetzu mat mimayim rishonim atmeim chutz leperek. It could be that when you wash mayim or rishonim, some tamei mayim rishonim water will go up onto the forearm beyond the wrist. Beyond the wrist, beyond the area of Netillas Yadayim. Visham, and over there on the forearm beyond the wrist, af shebo alei mayim shneim, even if you were to pour mayim shniim over there, ain't on mitar myself. The mayim shniim won't be mitar that water. The mayim shniim ain't on mitarin elabim kaim anetila. Because mayim shniim could only be mitar mayim rishonim in the mokayim hanetila, in the part of the hand where the hilchos Netillas Yadayim on the geya, avaloi b'chutz l'makayma, but not out of its place. The Tumas Yadayim the taharasa who ada parak dafka, because these halachas of Tumas Yadayim and Taras Yadayim are only in effect until the wrist. V'lachein, and therefore, im ein makbiya yadav, if you don't elevate your hand, yachzer amayim atmeim ahem l'saycha perek, that tamei mayim rishonim water will flow back down lower than the wrist onto the hands proper via tamei yadayim, and it will cause tuma again to the hands after you already washed the Netillas Yadayim. Kach pirsh roiv hamafarshim. This is the way the majority of the mafarshim explain the brisa in Saita. Ula pirusham, and according to their explanation, af im notal kalayoim, kalayad, even if you wash the entire hand, ad mekayim chibura im kenei azraya, all the way up into the wrist, gam kei tzarech leagbia, you have to elevate your hand. Because of this concern that the water might flow up above the wrist and then come back. But v'yesh chalkin, there are those who disagree, and they hold that if you take a wash all the way until the wrist, which we saw at the conclusion of the previous Siman, that's our minig, that we wash all the way till the wrist, then we don't have to be chayshish for this problem. That mayim rishonim water are going to go up above the wrist and then come back to the hand. There are those that say that this whole chash doesn't exist according to the opinion that you wash the Netillas Yadayim all the way to the wrist. To be chayshish that you're going to go do Netillas Yadayim and water is going to go all the way like above the wrist, that they weren't chayshish for. When do we have this chash? When does the brisa incite to say that you have to elevate your hands? That's if you're only washing until the knuckles. If you're only washing until the knuckles, then there's a very good chash that water is going to go onto the rest of the hand and come back. So the ikrak shashu rak b'shaloi natal kiyamat kishrei etz ba'osav. Techein hu hashir laharbe paiskim le'el b'simikov samachal sivdalin. And we saw that a lot of paiskim hold that that's taking the necessary share of the Netillas Yadayim, only until the knuckles. The oz chayshidan shema beis and netilin nishbach mat min akli chutz l'kishrei etz ba'osav. Then we would worry that some water went beyond the knuckles. The kashal etzamtzim sham, because it's we know from Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, it's hard to make sure that no water extends beyond the knuckles. If water went onto the palm of the hand, it's going to become tamei. And then the mayim shniim, you might not pour over there. You see, over there the mayim shniim would definitely work. The chash over here is you're going to wash mayim rishonim. You're going to try to wash mayim rishonim until the knuckles. A little water for the mayim rishonim is going to go beyond the knuckles. And then when you wash mayim shniim, you're going to successfully wash only until the knuckles. So you're not going to get that mayim rishonim that flowed beyond the knuckles. And then it's going to flow back to the hand and cause a problem. Okay, the Mechaber said already that you could be making like that opinion. And now, against this backdrop, the Chavetz Chaim says he could start to explain what the Mechaber says in this Siman. So let's see Mishnah Berurah's cut base. The Mechaber has said, "Hanoitel tzarech lachbiya yodav." You have to elevate your hands. First says the Mishnah Berurah, "Ubedievedim lo higbia." This is all lechatchila. Lechatchila, you should make sure to elevate your hands. But b'dievid, if you didn't, ubedievedim lo higbia mashpadein mechuyev lital shenis. you don't have to wash again. Unless you mamish saw that it was a problem, that water went beyond the wrist or beyond the knuckles and flowed back. Okay, I'm going to have to stop over here. So we'll continue next time, Yirtzeh Hashem, with Ois Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. Discuss of Limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua for us, Parnasset Shidduchim to all those in need. The Rebbeinu Shalom should protect Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael B'chol Makom Sheheim, especially, including those who are mamish in harm's way. And we should be zocheh to see the B'yas Kol Tzedek, the Gula Shlema, B'meher V'yameinu Amen. Be well.